us today. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Brand New Congress is really happy to host an event featuring three of our fantastic average everyday working people candidates that we're trying to elect for Congress here at Brand New Congress. Today we are talking to Paula Jean Swearingen in West Virginia. You know, she ran on our slate in 2018 to take on now I'm forgetting his name because now we're trying to take on Shelley Capito, and that's all that matters. But yeah, so she's running again in 2020 to go on to the general and take out a Republican and replace it with an amazing Democratic Senate candidate. And we have Lauren Ashcraft in New York 12. We also have Charles Booker running for Senate in Kentucky to take out Mitch McConnell. So we're really excited today to talk about policy. We're going to share a little bit of our life stories as well. Our candidates are going to share their common ground and their common thread in their backgrounds and roots to Appalachia, but also where that has taken them and inspired them to take the steps forward as regular working people and run for Congress, which we all know is very difficult. And so we're very excited to hear their stories today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And I guess we can go ahead and hop into our first question. So running for campaigns isn't easy. We're used to seeing millionaires and billionaires running for office. We're used to seeing people basically being bought out by the establishment. And that's what we're all here to fight against. Now, you guys each come from extraordinarily different backgrounds, but one of the ties that really binds you is your background tied to struggle. You didn't walk into your campaigns as extraordinary wealthy executives or a guarantee of establishment party backing. You really walked into your campaigns with great sacrifice. I'm sure that each and every one of you has kind of a moment, maybe a defining moment that's inspired you to run for office. So I'd like to take a moment to ask each of you, what was that defining moment for you and what has inspired you to run for office? Lauren, we can start with you.
Great. So as Zena had said, my name is Lauren Ashcraft and I'm running for Congress in New York's 12th Congressional District. And my story starts before I was even born. I was raised by a family with, on one side, my grandfather was a coal miner in West Virginia, and he was literally killed by corporate greed in the Farmington mine disaster. And his wife was a Japanese immigrant, my grandmother, who was left to pay the bills and feed her family with nothing, with small Social Security checks, and faced a lot of xenophobia and racism as she was trying to just feed her family and survive. And I think about the fact that we still have all of those problems today in my generation, and I want to stop them from being problems that affect future generations as well, because this is pretty ridiculous. And on the other side of my family, my grandfather fell when I was a kid and became a quadriplegic. And I just grew up really aware of how ignored the entire disabilities community is. Whenever I think about the fact that the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, is 1 year younger than me, and it still doesn't do enough to make sure that people like my grandfather can go to work, can use the subway, can access the same places that I can. He'd have to sue if he found a place that he wouldn't have access to, and that's pretty ridiculous. I grew up pretty angry, and I got progressively angrier whenever Donald Trump was elected as our president, and I became really active in the Women's March. And so this is a sequence of events of like my anger just getting worse and worse with time. And it came to the point of the Women's March in 2019, when I had organized for a few years with that rally. And there was a moment where Ocasio-Cortez came on stage. I was the MC, and just seeing that that's a real representative that in just a few short moments, she was able to already make the Green New Deal part of our everyday conversation. And I had thought about the fact that in my district, my representative hasn't pushed for anything really. And our district has been living the status quo, which is we're the home of Billionaire Row and also the home of thousands and thousands of people that sleep on the street every single night. So I decided to put my hat in the ring and stand up for what I believe in. And now, right in the middle of one of the worst economic crises in the entire history of our country, and also in the middle of a pandemic, we're seeing what it means to have leaders that are totally fine with the status quo and being bought by corporations. And I think, I don't mean to speak for the other candidates here, but we are very passionate in stopping this kind of status quo passive leadership, and we are ready to actually fight for people.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. Paula, I know that there are some similar stories in there that you can relate to with Lauren. Can you share with us, it may not be a defining moment, but what's kind of driven you to run for Congress, to run for Senate?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I am a poor coal miner's daughter and granddaughter, and I was born in Mullins, West Virginia, and I lived in a community called Iroquois, West Virginia. And most of my family were coal miners. My dad, my stepdad, my grandpa. My grandfather served in Korea. He was in the coal mines for 45 years, and he was a proud UNWA coal miner. My dad served in Vietnam, and he was a coal miner. And when I was a little girl, I lived in that, like I said, Iroquois. And essentially, I drank acid mine drainage. Our water came from an abandoned coal mine. It was orange, thick. It had a blue and purple film to it, and we used that water every day. We drank it, we bathed in it, we cooked with it. And my stepdad got laid off in the coal mines, and we had to move to North Carolina for a while. And until we had access to clean water, I didn't know that my hair wasn't red until I was 12 years old. Came back to West Virginia because my grandfather was suffocating to death with black lungs. So he did have a good pension and he had access to good health care, but he pretty much suffocated to death. And right after that, I buried my dad, 52 years old. He got cancer and he had black lung, but he got cancer from asbestos exposure in Vietnam. And so I got active, and I found out about mountaintop removal. I got really angered about that. It was mechanization taking jobs away from men. And I took it for granted that the mountains would always be here. And essentially, if another country would come into Appalachia and blow up our mountains and poison our water, we'd go to war. So I started being active with that. And my neighbor's daughter, 7 years old, she got a rare form of bone cancer. And they were saying it was environmental. They couldn't pinpoint the cause, but they were injecting coal waste underneath my town. And so I got even more angry because my family had sacrificed to power this nation. And the Industrial Revolution was built on the backs of Appalachians, their families, and in our communities. And we sacrificed a lot for the industry. And I wasn't going to give industry my children too. I spoke to the United Nations. I've rallied, I lobbied. I think one of my biggest awakenings was Jim Justice. He is our governor. He was a Republican. He changed his party affiliation to Democrat to get elected as governor in West Virginia. And then he changed his party affiliation after he got elected. But he's one of the biggest polluting coal barons in West Virginia. Not only has he not paid his taxes, but he owes unpaid mine fines, Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And he became our government official. He became our representative. And my ancestors turned over in their graves because that's not what we do here in West Virginia. I run for office in 2018 because I do believe that we can have economic diversity. We can have clean water and clean air. We don't have to be bid against each other for basic human rights. And it's past time that we can create a future for Appalachia so we can grow instead of falling far behind, because like I said, we have powered America and it's time for us to have a chance too. And that's why I'm running for office. I'm fighting for my children and grandchildren, and I'm making sure that West Virginia has a chance for change.
Thank you so much, Paula. Charles, what was it that drove you to run for? I know that you've ran for elected offices before, and I know that now you're taking that sort of to the next step and you're running for Senate. So what's inspired you to take the next step, and what inspired you to get involved in representation in the first place for your community?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to say that I'm really honored to be a part of the brand new Congress family, but very specifically today, I'm proud to be connected to these trailblazers. In Paula Jean, I loved watching you in Knock Down the House. You are a fighter, and you're my type of leader, because I call out politics on both sides of the aisle. I don't care who it is. And as far as me getting involved in politics, I'm a state representative now. The youngest Black state legislator in Kentucky since the very first one. I didn't expect to do any of this stuff. I come from a family of hardworking folks. My granddad was a farmer, then he got into construction, had all of the grandkids doing the work too. So I'm one of, I stopped counting at 71 grandchildren. So there are a whole lot of us. And, I was taught hard work early on, but we saw a lot of struggle. And both my parents dropped out of high school. My dad dropped out to go to the Army, and my mom dropped out to be mom number 2 because there was so many kids. And just seeing the struggle, the challenges, my mom going without eating so that I could eat. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've had to ration my insulin because I couldn't afford it, and just all of these things. Quite honestly, it pissed me off. Both my parents are ministers, come from a praying family. And we always knew that our challenges weren't because we're deficient or because we don't work hard enough or because we are lazy or something like that. It really comes down to the fact that people make decisions over our lives that don't give a damn about us. They don't see us. They're exploiting, extracting from us. And in the community I live in, I live in the west end of Louisville, which Louisville is considered, the urban core in many respects for the state. It's the biggest city. But within Louisville, you have the West End, which is, honestly, it's more similar to Appalachian than it is to the rest of the city. The poorest zip code in the state is in Louisville, where I live at. I just saw early on that the challenges we were facing won't change until we do. And what really triggered it for me to get into politics were my cousins and my daughters. So I have 2 girls, my bosses, Kaylin and Preston, my 6th grade and preschooler. And, I started thinking, the same things that my mom dealt with, that I complained about, not having places to shop. We live in an area that is about 75,000 people, 2 grocery stores, I say 1.5, a lot of dollar stores, because they're predatory, that's what they do. And 1 sit-down restaurant, lack of access to transportation, all these different challenges that you see in Appalachian, all across Kentucky, really. And thinking about my girls having to deal with that same thing lit a fire in me. And what turned it towards politics is when my cousin TJ was murdered. I've had 4 cousins murdered the past 4 years. And TJ was murdered on Easter Sunday 4 years ago. And when he died, I felt like I died that day. And I felt like I knew too much. I've worked in every level of government, and I was trying to work my way in. I call myself a troublemaker. I like to cause good trouble, and I wanted to get into spaces of government, because if you all are making decisions about us, then we need to be there. And so that's my frame. So I worked in every level and never thought I'd run for office until that moment. And I knew we could do better at the federal, at the state, and local level. And if I didn't become a part of the solution, I felt like I'd be a part of the problem. And so I ran for State House and have carried the fight. And the reason I'm running against Mitch McConnell is I saw up close how much he controls what does and doesn't happen in Kentucky. And he has essentially made a deal that says he's going to kick Kentucky off the cliff whenever it makes sense, which is all the time. Miners go down in those mines, come up with black lung. He turns his back on them. Jobs are leaving. He leaves us stranded on the tracks. Folks are trying to ration insulin just to survive. He's saying, don't accept healthcare. We're not going to give you healthcare. That's not an issue for me. And we're rising up to fight back. And so my run is an affirmation that regular people deserve to be represented and accounted for in the government that they pay for. And that's why we're going to beat them.
Oh man, Charles, that's what it's all about, right? At BNC, I'm going to tell you guys, we heavily vet our candidates. You guys all went through that process. You know that we talked to you all multiple times. We're working on building up a community, a family of candidates, people that are going to fight with each other on the Hill. But it's these stories that you guys are sharing that's really connected us to you, because you're not distant from what the people are struggling with, because you're struggling with it yourself. And that's ultimately the kind of representation that we need and we deserve as Americans on Capitol Hill, because, you know, our representatives up there, they're not up there they work for us, but you guys know they work for us, and that's why you're running. And that's what makes this so amazing. And me being from Southeastern Kentucky myself, all of your stories really resonate with me. You know, I know what it's like as a single mother, to keep the lights on, keep food on the table, you know, grow up in a trailer park, like have the pipe dreams of healthcare and college and a decent job. So another thing that kind of comes to mind that everything that you're saying is resonating with is really around workers' rights, as well as around just having a decent home, having a decent job. And, you know, with COVID-19 and the pandemic today, we already had so many people out of work. Our homeless rates were skyrocketing across the country. And I know all of you guys have housing as well on your platforms is a necessity, and we'll get to that as well. But right now I want to ask you about the lack of response from our representatives to truly help the people that are suffering, the small businesses, the people that have lost their jobs. We've seen these huge bank bailouts, just like in 2008, right? But where's the real relief for workers? So I want you guys to speak about sort of what's happening in your communities along those lines. And especially I want to start with you, Lauren, because you're in the heart of this. In New York, and so many workers out of work there, and so many people are affected by this pandemic. And so I'd love to start with you and get your feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a period about 2 weeks ago where I really felt all of this all of a sudden, like all throughout my body. Like I could barely just get off the couch, because when you think about all of the people that have died all around me, and you hear constant ambulance sirens, and you look out the window, I'm used to seeing taxis and traffic in a highway that's just booming right past me, and none of it's there. So it's really traumatic to be here in the middle, right in the epicenter of the virus. And on top of all of that, over 71% of the people in my district are renting their homes, and millions and millions of people have lost their jobs. We're not even done with the job loss yet. We can't even see the end of the economic crisis. And I mean, in so many other ways, we are being totally neglected by our representatives. And I haven't seen this fight and the anger that I would want to see from my opponent fighting for us to make sure that we don't become homeless. Because that $1,200, a lot of us in New York's 12th congressional district were excluded from that sum, because it has a salary threshold that is, you know, in New York's 12th congressional district, you're barely paying your rent with the same income that you could have a really nice house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for example. It's just a different way of life here, and we are totally excluded from any kind of assistance, yet we have astronomical rents to pay, and we don't have any kind of rent cancellation from our state, and we're just waiting just waiting for any kind of help and handout from our government. Meanwhile, I've seen companies like Shake Shack get $10 million and give it back as a PR stunt. My gosh, when you think about the fact that none of us can pay our rent here, but we've gotten maybe $1,200 max, which would pay for maybe half of a studio apartment's rent per month. We're so far behind here. And we're so far beyond having representatives that sign their names onto things sometimes. I'm furious because I want somebody that's going to sit at the table and say, my constituents can't pay their rent and I'm not leaving until they can. And I don't see that kind of fight on social media. I don't see it in the news. I don't see it in any kind of email. I see it sometimes when they sign their names onto things, but it's not enough anymore. And we're seeing it really highlighted right now. And again, it is why I'm running for Congress, because we do deserve a fighter here in one of the most expensive districts in the world, where a lot of us are working people struggling to pay the rent.
Yeah, absolutely. So what, Lauren, what would you like to see our representatives do? You know, when they get to Capitol Hill, what are they not doing? And what is it that is on your platform that I know you already had a platform that could address so many of these issues that were existing before this pandemic has made it super clear that these issues have always been here. And now with a crisis, it's 10 times worse.
Yes.
So what are some of the things that are on your platform or that you're fighting for that you think can help this?
So as we're seeing, everything is compounded right now. And in my district alone, 23,000 people have no health insurance at all. And that number is probably skyrocketing right now with everyone losing their job and unable to pay for COBRA, which is ridiculous. So obviously, single payer Medicare for all, that's a solution that we needed yesterday, and we need it even after this crisis. But right in the middle of a pandemic, absolutely should show us the need for every single person to be able to get the health care that they need without going into a lifetime worth of medical debt. So single payer Medicare for all, Green New Deal, that crisis is not going away. I'm right in the middle of that crisis as well. We have the East River running through my district, which is rising at 1.5 times the rate of anywhere else, the global average. And we feel it because our green spaces and our parks are flooding, and we've literally had to bury them and build them 8 feet higher with a flood wall installed, where people miss out on having a green space for an entire generation of their kids being home. So it's, Medicare for all, Green New Deal. We're seeing essential workers that are putting their lives on the line to take care of us, but they have 6 figures of student debt to pay back. And it's ridiculous to think of the fact that in this society, there are so many different ways in which we are being kept down and oppressed and set up for a lifetime worth of paying these banks back. And that's exactly what's happening right now too. These loans for small businesses and everything, it's set through to funnel through these banks so that they're reaping in billions of dollars in profit just from existing. Right. So everything that we can do to remove those barriers so that people aren't oppressed anymore. So abolishing student debt, making sure people can go to the doctor when they need to, making sure that we're not setting ourselves up to keep life from thriving on this planet in future generations, and everything that we can do to prevent this crisis in the first place. This is not the last pandemic that our country and our globe is going to face. And we were absolutely not prepared for this one. So let us take this time and opportunity to make sure that all of these holes are filled with safety nets and that we are prepared for the next ones as well.
Thanks, Lauren. I'd like to kind of go on what you're saying. And I've seen, Charles, I've seen you posting a lot online along the lines we always say at BNC, climate justice is social justice, is economic justice. Right now, I've seen you talking about the deaths of Black and brown people, about migrant communities, about the Black community, and how they've been deeply impacted, especially by this virus. It's really showing the economic hardships, the wealth disparity in communities of color and in marginalized communities like we are in Appalachia, for instance. Can you speak to that? And I know that you agree with a lot of the platforms. You agree with all the platforms Lauren's running for. You guys are running to fight for a lot of the similar issues. How do those tie into that, into those impacts? And were there climate or were there environmental issues that have also fed into health issues in your district that are now compounded by this virus?
Yeah. And so knowing that, our time is limited, and I just love listening to y'all. I'll be a little brief, but just to capture, I think the power and the opportunity in this moment, really building on what Lauren was laying out, is the reality that we have to address these issues within a lens of equity, and we really have to get to the structural challenges that undergird why we are seeing so many of these struggles being exacerbated right now. Because as we will all say that poverty existed before this pandemic, folks losing their jobs, struggling to afford their prescription, all these things were happening before the pandemic. In my neighborhood, unemployment has hovered close to 30% for years. We've been hanging on by a thread for years, and now we have all of that and a pandemic. And as we start to look at, well, how do we move forward? How do we address this moment? I think it's forcing us as a country to dig into the policies that I've been yelling for, and I think we're all screaming about, which is saying that we need to prioritize people, and we need to invest in making sure that people are supported and protected and their human rights are secure, because healthcare is a human right. And I think the biggest thing that I'm humbled to stand in and represent Kentucky and join these incredible leaders here is shining a light on the fact that the laws and the budgetary decisions that have been made and that haven't been made, how they disproportionately harm communities that are marginalized. And the majority of Kentuckians are marginalized. You have the aspect of structural racism that directly places a thumb or hammer or whatever blunt heavy tool on the necks of people that look like me, but because it is at a structural level, it's hurting everybody. And until we dig into that, we're never really going to solve the problem. And so I've been telling my story as a Black man, as a type 1 diabetic, folks dealing with immunodeficiencies. A lot of folks in Kentucky have health challenges, which means that we're all being left susceptible to failed leadership at the federal level that is allowing this current pandemic to essentially run amok when we could have put safeguards in place. We could have taken the steps to make sure that our communities were prepared and ready and could withstand this type of crisis. And I think that that's the lesson and the opportunity here. When we say we need healthcare for everyone, it's an understanding that if we don't make healthcare universal, if we don't make sure that communities in Appalachia, communities in the west end of Louisville, in the far purchase in Kentucky, have healthcare, when challenges come upon us, which we're facing right now, the bottom's going to fall out. And when the bottom falls out, it affects those big corporations that Mitch McConnell wants to protect. It affects our entire economy. And now we're seeing who's really essential in this conversation. And so I hate the fact that it has taken a pandemic to allow more people to see that we need a universal basic income, that people need financial freedom to make decisions in their lives, or that we all need healthcare, and that we should be making sure that we're investing in hospitals in rural parts of our country and underserved parts of our community, and that we're providing housing that's sustainable all the things that the Green New Deal talks about. So it just gives us a chance to peel back the lens or the blind spots or and I say it's more than a blind spot. It's complete and very intentional ignorance. Folks like Mitch McConnell know that we're hurting, know that these challenges exist for us, and do not care because they're profiting off of it. And I think leaders like us and regular folks all over the country speaking up on these issues is how we're going to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see both of Paula and Lauren shaking their head on that one. Paula, I know that sounds very much like how you talk about West Virginia. You guys have some of the similar economic struggles, lack of access to hospitals, lack of access to healthcare. One of the things that has been a benchmark for you is fighting for workers' rights, coming up from the legacy of Joe Hill and Mother Jones. And that's a big part of who you are and what you fight for. Yeah. So I kind of want to throw it to you about how workers' rights and workers' organizing kind of plays into our next steps after COVID. What and your ideas of economic growth for the region in West Virginia and how workers tie into that, because I know that is a major passion of yours and something that's been a legacy of your activism for years.
Yeah, West Virginia, we are sort of the heart of the labor movement. Mother Jones did organize here, the miners of Blair Mountain, the miners of Mate One, and like you said, Joe Hill. And I'm very proud of my heritage. And, my grandfather being a UMWA member for 45 years, in the coal mines and UMWA member, just like with UBB, it was a mine disaster that killed 29 men. Those men, if they would have been protected under a union, then they could have walked out of that mine and it could have saved their lives and they would still be alive today. And I want to bring back make sure that unions are able to support workers and everybody has the right to collectively bargain. It's very important to me. And we also have to make sure that we have economic growth in states like ours. And we need to make sure we support things like the Reclaim Act, and we put federal funds into states that are suffering like ours. The possibilities for West Virginia we just have to be imaginative. We could grow hemp on mountaintop renewable sites. We can have renewables here. We can invest in hydropower. We can invest in geothermal. If we have good roads, good schools, comprehensive broadband, which we don't have here across the state, if we have adequate sewage systems, if we're cleaning up our waterways and making sure that West Virginia is an inviting place to come, then we can invite business here. But what we've seen the most out of our incumbents is they're servants to corporations and lobbyists instead of our future. And I've seen for years across the state where people in the front lines of our communities have stood up and are taking care of each other and solving the problems already. Just like with this pandemic, people are, they're still dealing with a crisis for clean water, like in Payton City, West Virginia. And you have 5 women in that community that are not, they were distributing water and working hard to get water in their community, but now they're also feeding folks. And so I think it's come to a point in time that we have been so underserved. We know what it's like to live in our communities day to day, and who better to serve us than us? We just need visionaries for our future instead of visionaries for our demise.
Thank you, Paula. I do want to throw it over to Robin. Robin, would you like to speak a little bit? This is a fundraiser, so we're having a town hall. We're talking about issues, but it's crazy out there right now with campaigning, and we're going to let each of the candidates talk a minute or two about voting in their districts and what it's like out there on the ground trying to campaign during a pandemic. It's really changed things up a lot. But Robin, would you like to give some information on how people can contribute?
I think she's muted.
Sorry, guys, I'm muted. Yeah, I know I'm off mute now. Thank you.
Real life Zoom problems.
So people in West Virginia are already voting. New York, which is weeks away from the primary. So this our digital reality now is all the campaigns have had to convert to digital. So that means no door knocking, no, nothing in person. So this creates challenges, but also opportunities, ways to get in front of people. It means that all of our candidates' budgets, are having to be looked at. So tonight, every single dollar matters. So if you've got a few bucks, there's a donate link. I'll make sure it's in all the different channels and chats. Please throw in whatever you can tonight and then throughout the next few weeks, because it literally every dollar really does matter. So I'm going to let it go with that. Just please, if you can support us, please support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. So Paula, I want to start with you and sort of ask about what it's been like kind of campaigning in COVID. I know that voting has already opened up in your district and people have been voting already now for quite some time. How do people vote? What do they need to do to vote for you? How do they get their ballots? And if you could talk just a little bit about that so that people know how to cast their ballot for you in West Virginia.
So our Secretary of State has opened up the absentee ballot process to everybody in the state, and they have sent out absentee ballot applications to every registered voter in this state. And then once you send that in, then they'll send you a ballot and you'll have the opportunity to vote by mail. If you do not get that application, contact your local county clerk and they will make sure that you do get that application so you still can feel like you're safe at home. You can go to the Secretary of State's website. If you do have access to the internet, you do have to print that application off at home if you have a printer, and you can send it in that way. And as far as campaigning here in the state, it actually has been really different, but it's been really amazing. We have an incredible team and we have outraised everyone in the primary 8-1. So it really proves that you can have a people funded campaign and have integrity in a campaign. And we are the only campaign that's on the ballot too that has a full staff. And I am incredibly proud of my team. I have an incredible campaign manager, finance director, comms director. We just hired a couple of people on field and we've had 800 to 1,000 folks do sign up to make phone calls to voters. So we're to get out the vote. We are asking folks to, sign up to volunteer, to phone, bank, and text, because we really could use your help. People are voting right now, and it's really been amazing. I spend a lot of my day talking to donors, and I talk to voters, and just that connection of even just making that phone call during the pandemic and just being able to check on everybody. It's really been humbling. And I tell you, Appalachians are like the salt of the earth. It just, I can't tell you, it's almost every day that I cry because, or almost cry because of talking to voters. It's just amazing to me how supportive not only everybody has been in their state, but people across the country. And I can't thank you all enough for helping us.
Thank you, Paula. Lauren, do you want to talk about, I know yesterday the first ballots were mailed. I don't know if people have received them yet. What's going on over there in New York?
So the first thing that's happening is people are being mailed applications for their ballot because nothing can be too simple in New York. So you're going to get an application for an absentee ballot in the mail within the next week or so. You might even have it already. When you get this, you absolutely have to fill it out and send it back, and then you'll receive an absentee ballot. That's what you can use to vote. If you don't want to wait for something to come in the mail, you're actually able to go to nycabsentee.com and apply for an absentee ballot that way, which takes a minute max, and you'll know that it's definitely coming in the mail for you as well. So we need every single vote. And there's been so much confusion with the presidential primary getting taken off the ballot, put back on, taken off, put back on. Anyway, my election is definitely taking place no matter what's going on with the presidential primary, which as of this moment is still on. So June 23rd, we need every single vote possible. And if you have any questions about how to fill anything out, just reach out to us personally. We love to help. We want to make sure your voice is heard, even if you're voting against me. So contact us at thepeople@laurenashcraft.com, because voting matters. And it is it's so important that we use our voice and elect people that actually represent us over these huge corporations and the profits that drive them. And the other thing I want to say, just along the lines of what Paula Jean was saying, is we've had to change how we operate. And I'm so proud of our team. Over the course of this campaign, we've had over 400 volunteers work with us. And we're seeing the passion behind this movement that we're all part of, with people signing up and making calls and making sure people know how to fill out their applications for an absentee ballot, and letting them know they have an opportunity to actually choose a true representative in this district. And it's amazing to see, and it's really an honor to be part of. But with that said, as you mentioned, Zena, we have had to change how we budget as well, because we were going to go to every single door in our universe and hand them a pamphlet about me, but we can't do that anymore. So we've needed to incorporate mailing this information out to everyone, which is why $1 pays for us to reach 2 voters. And that makes a huge difference in a tight grassroots campaign. So really appreciate everyone who's part of this with us, whether it's to make phone calls for any of us, to throw $1 our way through the link that Robin's putting in the live streams, and just thank you for supporting us.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Now I want to throw it over to Charles. Charles, I am from Kentucky, so I have been trying to figure out how to vote myself. So I know it's kind of crazy here. Can you share with folks how to get the vote in for you?
Yeah. So we just received some good news over the past week, where our State Board of Elections agreed. I want to commend our governor for pushing on it, our Secretary of State for seeing that we needed to do this, to have no excuse absentee voting. So the portal, there's going to be an online portal for that. That should be live by May 22nd, and folks will be able to vote absentee. They would have to be in by June 16th. Our primary election is June 23rd. And there is a broader push for mail-in voting universally. And the hope is that we'll be able to get that in place for the general. There's a growing coalition that's demanding that. And I put out a statement demanding it a couple weeks back. And voting rights has been like my central issue as a legislator. Because Kentucky has been historically one of the most disenfranchised states in the country. It has been really hard to vote here. And they actually, Republican leadership passed a voter ID bill during this pandemic, because what better time to make it harder to vote than when people are fighting for their lives. So we got our hands full, but I am hopeful that the progress that we're making now, folks are getting past the politics in a lot of respects. And, we're going to do our job with this campaign to make sure folks are getting registered and getting access to their ballot so that they can vote. We're trying to figure out how many voting locations are going to be available. They're going to be by appointment. So a lot of questions are being answered as we speak. But my goal in this race, but in general, is to make it as accessible as possible. We got to break down barriers to the ballot box. That's the only way change will ever happen. And so I'm really excited, and I share the sentiment of my colleagues that this is a tough time. Make no mistake, this is an incredibly difficult time. But the response that we're seeing with our campaign is so humbling. To see so many folks that understand my message, which is bigger than Mitch McConnell. He is terrible, and I know you all join me in wanting to beat him. But this is bigger than him. This is about us. And folks have stepped up saying, you know what, we're fighting for our future here. And so we've had volunteers crushing it. Just this last month, we had 400 volunteers, over 1,300 shifts, and already on place to blow that number out of the water. And a lot of these people are folks that have never gotten involved in campaigns before. That's the part that gives me hope. A lot of relational organizing. And the this pandemic didn't really change our approach. It did take one of the pieces off the table that, means the most to me, is sitting down with folks, building relationships. And, I got a lot of preaching in my family, and this movement is, where we're locking arms, and we had events set up all over Kentucky. We were already packing places out, and to not be able to do that right now is tough. But the parts of our campaign that we're able to lean into is really important, big picture, because what we have to do is meet people where they are for democracy's sake. And that means, how do you equip folks to become organizers at home, wherever they are? And that's what we've been doing. We've done a lot of digital canvassing, using apps to identify and build networks of organizers. We have volunteer coordinators all over the Commonwealth that are helping us run phone banks, virtual events, and identifying the voters that we need to win this race. So this opportunity is here for us. And I think all of us are saying that the news may not be capturing this energy, but folks are excited to change things because they see how bad it can get. And in Kentucky, we're all pissed off at Mitch McConnell. So he's certainly helping.
I think
Yeah,
we're all
for
pissed
sure.
off at Mitch McConnell.
Yes.
Right.
And if we're, it doesn't matter what state you live in. If you live in Washington State, if you live in Oregon, if you live in each of these incumbents in office are affecting every single one of us, because every single vote cast affects us all. So even if you don't live in West Virginia, you don't live in New York, you don't live in Kentucky, contributing to these campaigns will help us ultimately get all the work done. And also volunteer. You guys do, all of you guys, except like out of state phone bankers and stuff like that?
For sure. We have Americans sitting in London that are dialing for us. So anywhere you are, if you want to help us reach our neighbors and get them out to vote and fill out their absentee ballot, then you are welcome on our team.
That's right.
Yeah, and the teams will be posting in where you can volunteer in the chats. So be sure that you check that out and call for these candidates. Donate if you can. We know it's hard for some families out there right now. Paula, you always share a story about someone who donated, the lady who donated $10 to you. I know that you remind me of that all the time. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Oh, I'm wondering which one you're talking about now.
It's always a different donor, but I know that weighs heavily on your heart, and I would just love to hear you.
Well,
kind of
it does. We always try to spend our money wisely too, as far as campaigning, because there are people that I know and old ladies that give up their lunch, and give $5 to campaigns like ours. And it's really humbling that people give up so much just to try to get true representation. And I'm always humbled and grateful that people give up so much to help people like us. And it makes me want to fight harder. Like one of my mentors, Congressman Ken Heckler, he lived to 104 years old, and he was our congressman and a true public servant for West Virginia. And we miss him because he did represent us. But he was talking about when he was campaigning, which I can't, we can't get out and go to spaghetti dinners now, but he said he hit every spaghetti dinner in his district. And he said that when he reached Congress, when he put his feet on his desk, he owed nobody but the people of West Virginia. And that's always held close to my heart too. And I always remember the sacrifice that people put into our campaigns. And when we do reach Congress, we'll owe nobody but the people that put us there. And I want to say something real quick, if you don't mind, Zaina, with everything that's went on with the presidential race, and talk about our movement for a second. I know everybody's really discouraged with what's happened with the presidential election. And this is why me and my colleagues are running for office. This really just solidifies that we do need a brand new Congress, and we need true representation in Congress, no matter who our president is. And that's why I stand behind this whole slate of candidates. And it's especially important that we do have a good, strong Senate, and that's why I decided to run for United States Senate again, because we can make decisions as well about the Supreme Court. So, you know, it's really important that we have true people servants in Congress and make sure no matter who our president is, that we are going to be truly represented.
Thank you so much. And actually, I saw we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. I did see that question be presented by someone in the chat. So thank you guys so much for adding questions. Charles, I know that you have a hard stop at 9 because you've got campaigning to do tonight. But we will be carrying on a little bit afterwards to have some Q&As with you guys. But that's one question that I would love to maybe start off with, Charles. We know that it's sort of, there's been a little bit of hardship with the with Bernie Sanders race and where things have gone with the presidential primary. And one of our folks asked, with Bernie Sanders out of the race, what are your plans to further strengthen the movement? Because elections come and go, movements do not. So yes, what are your plans for the future? So Charles, I'd love to start with you on that question. And I know, Paula, you actually took the initiative and kind of answered it just a moment ago. So
Yeah, no, actually, Paula did answer it. The person that asked that great question actually answered it too. Because, you know, one thing that Senator Sanders always said is that it's not me, it's us. And the movement was never about Bernie Sanders. He just understood that and understands that it needs to happen, that system level change needs to happen, and that we need to end poverty. But we're the movement. We are the change, you know, and I think that the proof that the movement is building and that it's happening is that you got a young Black man from the poorest zip code in Kentucky running against the most powerful Republican in the country, because Donald Trump's not a Republican. And you know, and just in these, just the folks on this panel, but the whole slate for Brand New Congress is an example and proof that change is coming. And, you know, I think what we do is look inside, look to one another, and understand that our hope for the future is worth fighting for, that we don't have to be complacent and accept this status quo, and that we can dig into the issues we believe in, stand boldly with integrity and moral clarity on them, and build a bigger coalition, which will include some folks that voted for Trump. Because the reality is the message of populism that Trump was exploiting, calling out the system that's broken, that Trump correctly did, even though he was using it to then sell seed oil, creates the opportunity for folks to see that our challenges are bigger than party. This is not about being left or right. This is not about, you know, the titles. I don't care what people call me. I've been called a lot of things. This is about fighting for family, and by standing against structural inequity, saying we need Medicare for all with single payers, saying that we need a Green New Deal. In fact, in Kentucky, we're going to have a Kentucky New Deal because we're going to lead on it, and that we do need universal basic income. We need to stop criminalizing poverty and criminalizing a plant and legalize cannabis. A whole lot of things we can do to break down barriers. This is the moment we can seize it. And I hope that my story is just one bright example that is possible for all of us.
Thank you so much, Charles. That's awesome. So let's see, I am looking at some questions right now. Paula, we actually have one for you about, and Karen Kenju, I believe that's the way that you pronounce it. If I butchered your name, I apologize. My name's Zainab, so I'm used to that on my end. But thank you so much for the question about Bernie. We really appreciate that. Paula, someone had asked about, you do have a challenger in the race who's ran for office before, and they were asking about what differentiates you from that challenger as far as taking things forward and winning and being a prospective candidate to take on Shelley Moore Capito.
First and foremost, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. My opponent did. My opponent campaigned with the Tea Party in 2014, and he was very proud of that vote when he was campaigning with conservatives in Logan County. He did win a Senate seat, but he has campaigned a lot. I mean, I don't really know where my opponent stands because we don't know where he's at most of the time. He'll say he supports Medicare for all, then we don't know. He says he supports this and we don't know. After he quit it, he ran for president and he quit 10 days later after he quit his Senate seat. And out of that campaign, he owes $45,000 and he still owes that debt. And it's pretty sad that we have to deal with people that just want to enhance their political careers, and it's about self-promotion. But again, we've outraised him 8-1. We're not really worried about him. He seems to have a lot of hot air, but he's not really done a lot for West Virginia, and we know it. And so we're just moving forward, and we are ready to go after Shelley Moore Capito, because that's the most important aspect of what we're doing. Shelley Moore Capito, her father was governor, and she lives off her daddy's legacy. That's the only reason why she's in the United States Senate. She's been in office for 20 years. She was the first woman to be elected into the United States Senate to represent West Virginia. However, she doesn't stand for women's rights. She has turned her back on the children in this state. She's a grandmother and a mother too. And it's time for her to face me woman to woman and tell me why she has turned her back on the children dying and starving in this state.
Absolutely. And you know what's
Sorry,
interesting about that? That's good. You know what's interesting about that is that you're challenging, Republican, Charles, you and Paula are challenging Republicans, but Carolyn Maloney, she has a lot of the same stories as, Mitch McConnell. She votes for a lot of the same legislation as these two Republicans do. So what does it mean to kind of take that seat?
I mean, it's been an interesting journey because I get asked, like, how dare you challenge a woman? I don't know, Paula Jean, if you get asked the same thing. And also,
no,
like,
she's not popular, Lauren. I mean,
okay.
Everybody's like, hell yes, Paula Jean, go get her.
I also get asked, why would I challenge a Democrat? And the thing is, you can put a D behind your name, but are you standing up for the everyday person? In her case, the answer is no. And we deserve to finally have, I stand for canceling rent right now. I stand for a universal basic income. I stand for Medicare for all. And I don't see active fighting just if you tweet it once or you sign a bill. It doesn't mean that you're just doing what's required of you. But in this day and age, when we're right in the middle of a serious pandemic, we're just seeing that scraping by and doing just barely what's in the job requirement is not enough anymore. And people deserve more. And that is what I'm running to bring to this district, so that nobody has to worry about becoming homeless, whether it's in the middle of a pandemic or not, because we can guarantee housing, we can guarantee you having the basic necessities, human rights, and everything that you need to live with dignity.
Absolutely. Charles, I know that this is, that you have another appointment right after this live stream. We are going to move to a Q&A, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to just chat with people right before you leave and kind of give any closing ideas or thoughts or anything that you may have before you have to hop off.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you all for the chance. Thank you for seeing me, for seeing our humanity, and allowing me to be a part of not only an incredible slate, but a very powerful movement of regular people standing up and fighting back. And I just want to say that this campaign for me here in Kentucky is out of dedication. It's out of love for family. It's out of a belief that together we can do anything. I was taught in faith, if you have just a mustard seed worth of faith, you can move mountains. And we got some political mountains, one named Mitch McConnell, that we got to move. And I have a lot of hope. All the challenges that I've seen that we're talking about here, facing working families, facing labor, facing our public workers, facing our students, our veterans, our seniors, all of our families. these challenges are giving us a sense of urgency. And I'm just declaring that we're going to use that urgency to transform our future in a bold way. And I have a primary. I'm running against Mitch McConnell's playbook in the primary, and then I'm going to beat him in the general. And what I'm here to say is the same thing that Lauren said, that Paula Jean is saying, that the status quo is not simply defined by the letter behind your name. And people need change regardless of what party it's coming from. And the movement right now is saying that we're going to deliver on these issues that are going to secure our future, and we don't care who's in the way. So I'm proud, I'm fired up, and I'm very humbled. And if you can go to bookerforkentucky.com to join us, this is the fight worth fighting.
Thank you, Charles. And you know what? We had
Can I interrupt
someone
1
who
second,
joined-
Zane? I want to say something to Charles
Yeah.
before he goes. Charles, I just want
Yeah.
to say, because we haven't had the opportunity to talk, I was so excited when I found out about you, to see a true public servant running against Mitch McConnell. And I watched your video the other night, My Life Matters Too, speaker. Give them hell, buddy. I'm right behind you. If we weren't in the middle of a pandemic and I wasn't running for office myself, I'd be right there with you, boots on the ground. Thank you for what you're doing.
I echo that, and I'm fangirling being part of this panel, because I saw that video too, and I turned to my partner. I was like, I'm doing this every single day, and you riled me up. So it's amazing what you're doing, and both of you have to win. I am so in awe of both of your work.
Oh, well, you too, Lauren. And I mean, I was excited when I found out about Lauren too. Like Appalachian woman, you go and just finding out about her grandpa and stuff. I mean, it's just this whole slate. I mean, y'all look at everybody on this slate. If we want to change Congress, this is a bunch of fighters. We can do it.
This is what it looks like.
Unite our fight.
Yes.
All right, well, I will see you all soon. I'm locked arms with you virtually, and let's build this movement. Let's win these races.
Thank you, Charles.
Love you, brother. Good night.
Thanks, Charles. We had someone on our Zoom stream, Joyce. She said that she's been calling for Charles as well, and she's all the way out in San Francisco. So that is so awesome. Thank you so much for that, Joyce. She said she's also a member of 1,000 Grandmothers for Climate Change.
Yes.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for joining us, Joyce. And thank you so much for calling, because you guys know calling is super critical right now. We can't knock doors. We can't do the regular grassroots on the ground grunt work that usually wins these campaigns. So we're having to do it all digital. It's a whole new world. And every one of you guys on the phone makes a difference, and every one of you guys that donate make a difference. So we do have a couple of questions that have streamed in. We have one for Lauren. Hi, Lauren. Can you explain the importance of a federal job guarantee?
Oh my gosh, thank you for that question. I am so passionate about a federal jobs guarantee. I mean, talk about right now, where so many people are losing their jobs, and we don't know when the end of this crisis is, and we don't know what's on the other side. If we had something like a federal jobs guarantee, then everyone would have that answer, and that would just be a sense of insurance. It's job insurance for all of us. I mean, I've worked jobs that I hated, and I couldn't leave because I needed health insurance. And there are situations where people can't leave abusive relationships because they don't have an income. The federal jobs guarantee is not the government forcing a job on you. It's saying there is a job guaranteed for you if you ever need it. And it works in conjunction with state governments and local governments to decide what kinds of jobs would be really beneficial to your locality and society. And I am a really big disability rights advocate. So I think about things like making sure that voting is accessible, and important videos and pieces of news are translated into American Sign Language and captioned for everybody. And there are so many jobs. You could do it from home, you could do it from an office, and every type of job could be. I've even heard of stand-up comedian could possibly be a job that's guaranteed, because in New York City, our entertainment industry is huge, and it's part of our economy, and it also does a lot for people and their well-being. Caretakers. I think about my family, how we all became my grandfather's caretaker when he was paralyzed, because you can't afford to hire one. Under a jobs guarantee, if somebody would be a caretaker for a family member who needed it, they would receive a salary. So it's just a really wonderful idea. And I would love offline or in another question to talk about how we do all this. Just in like a 10-second summary, our federal budget is not what we can afford. Our federal budget is what our representatives have listed as their priorities. And somehow we as people have never made it on that list of priorities. It's always, oh, what bailouts can we give these corporations? What handouts can we give to these CEOs so that their salaries can be increased and they get more stock buybacks? But guaranteeing us a living wage and guaranteeing us health insurance has never made it on the budget. And so I am pushing to make sure that we are all a priority, and those corporations that are right across the river from me can fend for themselves as we've had to.
Thank you, Lauren. That's awesome. Paula, I know that when it comes to West Virginia and a federal jobs guarantee, you talk about this a lot, I know that you've mentioned how it ties to the Reclaim Act in the past and how it sort of ties to the Green New Deal now and things like broadband access. Can you speak to that?
Oh, yeah, we do need, like I said, economic diversity, and a federal jobs guarantee would help greatly because we are one of the sickest and poorest states in the nation, but we have to build economic diversity and we have to create an infrastructure, like I said, to build business here. And with the Reclaim Act, it'll actually create job growth, and it'll also clean up these old mine sites where people are living in communities where their rivers and streams are still running orange and black. So it's vitally important that not only do people have a living wage, but they do have jobs to go to, but they're also protected under union and under the federal jobs guarantee, so people can survive for a change in the state.
Yeah, and what are some of the jobs, some of the economic development you see for the region?
Well, like I said earlier, we can grow hemp on mountaintop removal sites. With mountaintop removal sites, when they call it reclamation, I've always called it reclamation, because they're really not fit for a rattlesnake. But I've looked at and studied about hemp. It creates topsoil, and it also repairs the land so it can create future growth. So we can reap the benefits of maybe creating plastics. I wouldn't even think about anything organic on those sites, but it does do some type of repair. If we can invest in renewables, hydropower, geothermal, if we have good roads, good schools, if we legalize cannabis, we would see economic growth within 6 to 8 months. So that would give us a push in our state. But like I said, good roads, good schools, good infrastructure, comprehensive broadband. We've been promised comprehensive broadband for probably 20 years, but we've not seen it. So we really need leaders that are going to implement that and make sure that is part of what we have here in our state in order for us to grow. The possibilities are endless, and we can talk all day long on what can happen for West Virginia, but we just have to make sure that we have representatives that are visionaries for our growth.
Thanks, Paula. That's awesome. You're right. We need economic visionaries.
On the addiction, with what's going on with the pandemic in our state, if you don't mind for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, West Virginia ranks #1 to be the most vulnerable now. It's statistically because of the cardiovascular disease, the lung diseases, diabetes, and we have some of the most vulnerable people in our society. And a large part of our population are retirees, so they are more vulnerable to this virus. And they're talking about opening up our state. On our website, we have a petition If you can go to our website and look at it, we will not be a test case of what the petition is, but we are petitioning our governor not to open up our state, but also go into send the National Guard into rural communities where they don't have access to broadband. They're living in food deserts. They don't have access to rural transportation. And sometimes they don't even have access to the outside world. So instead of opening up our state, we need to make sure that we are checking on the most vulnerable in our state. And on a federal level, our incumbent, Shelley Moore Capito, she's actually on the task force to reopen our state. Instead of her, them talking about opening our state, they need to stick in more federal relief into states like ours, and also make sure that we have a stimulus of $2,000 a month, because a lot of people are scared. They're bid against each other again for basic human rights. So it's either, we have to open up the economy, or we're going to put out these vulnerable people out to die. And the only reason they're talking about opening our state is because of the population. We have been collateral damage here in West Virginia for way too long, and we definitely don't want to be test cases for COVID-19. So folks, if you can, go to the website, paulagene.com, and sign that petition. And we're going to make sure that our governor gets it, Joe Manchin gets it, and Shelley Moore Capito gets it. Please try to help save lives here, because like I said, they've not cared. They were talking about people that didn't care before, that are actually supposed to be responsible for our lives right now. They didn't care if we lived or died. We have suffered enough here in West Virginia. We don't have to suffer even more because of COVID-19. All right, I'm off my soapbox, but thank you.
It's not a soapbox. It's you're right. It's just the truth, right? As women, we want to apologize for being on a soapbox sometimes, but you're just standing up for what's right, and you're out there speaking about it. So that's important.
You're exactly what West Virginia needs.
That's right. Lauren, well, I kind of want to ask both of you guys, what's your vision of where we kind of go as a country for the next 2 and 6 years as, members of the House? Because Lauren, you're running for New York 12, and then Paula Jean as a member of Senate. What do you guys think we can accomplish in that time? And what do you think it's going to take right now during the election season to get us to the point where we can get things done? Lauren, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is really a breaking point that we're in right now. And I kind of see it as we're staring off of a ledge, and we have to figure out how to get down. And we're being pushed over that ledge right now, which is not good. And we've had representatives that know exactly who their donors are, and that their donors want the status quo no matter what human life it costs. And it is so important that we replace those people who are fighting to keep everything exactly how it is, because we all know right now it is not working for us. And so my vision includes public financing of federal elections. It includes getting that big money out of politics so that these corporations can't buy people to represent them instead of people. And it includes being able to go to the doctor without being afraid of a huge medical bill with Medicare for all. It includes a homes guarantee. It includes a federal jobs guarantee. It includes alleviating this lifetime burden of student debt for seeking an education to climb out of your situation and educate yourself and get the job that you dream of doing every single day. So it's so past due that we have representatives that are thinking about what it's like to be us, because they're so far removed. It's time to elect people who are struggling right now and who have struggled, and they're going to take those struggles and those fights to Congress with them. And I know my opponent has a lot of backup plans. I don't have the luxury of having homes in multiple different states right now. This is my home right here. And I'm going to feel the impact of climate disaster. I'm in the epicenter of a COVID-19, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to fight for people. And that's exactly why I'm running.
Heck yeah.
So
That's
I
right.
echo all that. So, everything that she said, and Medicare for y'all, Medicare for all y'all, that's one of the first things is, making sure when I get to Congress is to get behind, Bernie's bill. And I'm going to say why I support his is because it's the most comprehensive that I've seen. And also it implements just transition for people that work within, that work in insurance companies. So there's actually language in there to fund folks so they do not have to worry about us advancing and growing and being left behind. And, but, to add what Lauren said, I agree with everything that she said, but for my state specifically, and I know people are dealing with this across the country, is the addiction epidemic. People are, West Virginia leads in drug overdose deaths right now. And I have spent a lot of time talking to leaders that are trying to solve that problem. And it's been proven that long-term recovery systems are the most effective. Drug replacement therapy plays a small role in addiction. And we hear from a lot of our incumbents, which are actually probably some of the biggest drug dealers that we have, because they take the large donations from pharmaceutical companies, and they take that money and they want to put that money back in to pharmaceutical companies with drug replacement therapy and long-term recovery systems. They're not funded on a state level to a federal level. And so we have to make sure that, on a state level and federal level, that we do fund those systems and they have the support of medical providers. And Medicare for All will also help with the addiction epidemic. It'll take the burden, Medicare for All will take the burden off small businesses of having to pay high premiums under the ACA, and they can put that money back into their business and into their employees and grow. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? But that's one of the main things is that. And then second to that, after I've traveled this state and I've been an activist for a long time, I think that the people that are solving our problems need a seat at the table when it comes to Congress. Instead of, we're supposed to be public servants. And if I go to Congress, it's important to me to bring those people to a round table or a town hall and let them help write legislation that's important to them. Our leaders do not look to us to make decisions like we've already talked about. They serve corporations and lobbyists. It's past time for the people in this country to look at people, look at our representatives and make sure that they are serving them and they are held accountable. And we have a seat at the table for the decisions that are made for us. So that's one thing that I've added to my platform, is to make sure when I do go to DC that West Virginians, I'm just going to be a vessel. It's going to be humbled if I can be a public servant to the people of West Virginia. And I want the people of West Virginia to have a say-so on what impacts their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys both. We have another question from Jennifer Craig from BNC. How, if at all, have you changed since deciding to run? Paula, if you want to kick that one off.
Well, I was an activist, and I think running for office is like activism on steroids. I think it was probably the hardest thing I ever did. After running in 2018, I didn't know if I was ever going to run for office again. I was still active in my community, and I found out I was expecting my first grandson. He was born on January 26th, and it made me want to fight even harder because I worried every day if my boys would get cancer. Now I have somebody else that, oh my gosh, I love so much. I can't believe what it's like to be a grandparent. But it's changed me because I've learned a lot more about how our government works. And I've learned a lot of lessons as a candidate. And win or lose, we keep on pushing that needle. And I learned that it's not always about winning, but every time that we keep on pushing the needle a little bit harder, we're holding our incumbents accountable, as well as increasing the chance of other people getting elected. Like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, it takes 100 of us to try in order for one of us to win. And we keep on changing the narrative and the conversation, not only across the country, but across the world now. And we're changing the political dynamic across this country. And it really makes me excited to see that our movement does continue to grow. It's about us still standing together. It's not about partisan politics. It's not whether you have a D or R or beside your name. It's about us ensuring that we have true representation. This country was built by the people, for the people, and of the people, and we have to make sure that our government serves us.
Yes. Lauren, how do you think running for office has reshaped your life? I know that you went from, having blue collar family in your background to, helping take care of your grandfather to even working on Wall Street. So kind of, and being a comedian in between all of that. So how has running for office kind of changed things for you and kind of relate to those experiences you've had in the past?
Oh my gosh, it's a combination, like you said, of all of my life experiences, and that, I mean, I've gotten progressively more angry as time has gone on, from what's happened to my family and going completely ignored by representation. And I quit my job on Wall Street, and I will never work for the financial sector again, because in multiple different roles in the financial sector, I saw these handouts go directly to these companies instead of us. And walking into work every day, you see less and less people, and all these companies claim that they don't have the money and they didn't have the revenue they thought they did. Well, it turns out that money doesn't trickle down, and I've seen it with my own eyes. And literally, while working in a bank, I became a democratic socialist, and I carry that with me. I've been a stand-up comedian, and what that means to me is I see the world and express myself in maybe a different way than a lot of other people, but maybe I'm expressing these feelings that we're all feeling, and I'm angry. And I've used my comedy. I remember how I formed a charitable series called Collection Box Comedy. We actually were going to have a party for after Donald Trump was, after we thought he was going to lose, and we thought he would exit politics. And we were having a celebration that was called Bathing in the Tears of Racists. There were posters all over New York, and we were ready to celebrate. And it didn't turn out that way. And we were devastated, sickened. I still am. I wake up thinking that we're in a dream and it's real. And I turned it into a fundraiser for Planned Parenthood, because as you know from me organizing the Women's March, I'm really mad that my bodily autonomy is always on the table, and it's always on the chopping block. And we are not represented as much as we should be as women. And so I feel I would be better fighting for my rights than a Republican guy, for example, who's not fighting for me to have bodily autonomy. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. All of these things come together in what I'm fighting for, and I put my hat in the ring because I see in so many different ways that we've gone ignored. And I could have never imagined the situation that we're in right now. And we are so underprepared for it because we don't have the safety nets that every single other first world country does. And I want to fight to make sure that we do. And I believe we are a pretty cool country, and maybe, just maybe, we can implement such wonderful safety nets for our people that we can set an example for other countries someday. And that's the vision that I have as somebody who hopes to serve my community, and I would be really honored to do that.
You guys are making me all misty-eyed over here with your stories. So I know that we're getting close to the top of the half an hour. So I kind of just wanted to give you guys a chance to talk about how you guys have connected. Just open up an open chat between the two of you guys about how you connected here. And Lauren, tell us about sort of why you reached out to Paula to have this forum, and Paula, about what it's like to work together on the slate as candidates.
I love Paula Jean.
I love you too.
Yeah, I mean, I went to West Virginia University. I was born in Morgantown. My family has its roots there. My grandfather was killed in a coal mine. And I see you as what that state needs. I've seen it be cheated. I've seen its poverty. I've seen people literally be killed by the corruption, and we need a fighter like you. So seeing you and your fight in 2018, I was really excited for you, and I still am, because you're going to win, and it's finally going to be the kind of fighter that West Virginia so desperately needs.
Oh. Well, you know, I was excited to learn about Lauren, and when we brought her on the slate with Brandon Congress, and I know how stringent Brandon Congress vets their candidates, and there's not anybody on the slate that I couldn't stand behind and say, I get behind 100%, and this person is going to be there for you, because I trust BNC fully. And when I found out that we had Lauren, you know, I didn't feel like the lone Appalachian anymore. You know, I had somebody in the slate that was, you know, knew a lot about West Virginia. And then we brought on Charles. You know, I love everybody, but, you know, Appalachians have a sense of pride with our heritage, and we're so close anyway. And it's exciting to move from 2018 to know that there's going to be 2 more Appalachians that might be able to serve us in Congress. That's just so exciting to me, because I know that, you know, we take care of each other and we are fighters. So it just excites me beyond words to have these 2 other folks on the slate that are from Appalachia.
It is in your blood. I was actually, my partner, I was trying to explain this before the panel, and he's watching right now, but I was trying to explain that you don't actually ever leave Appalachia. I put on WVU's band, which I'm a music nerd myself and was in marching band in high school. But I put on them playing Country Roads, and I was like, just watch this. I made it 3 seconds in and I started bawling. And he's like, oh, it's so cool. It's really nice. And I was like, you just don't get it. but yeah, it's always going to be part of me, and you don't actually leave. And same with New York. It's a huge part of me too. I'm becoming where I am, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, they're running around with Corey Bush and Amy Vela wherever we go. They're like, Corey's like, you know what? If you don't know about West Virginia, Jean's going to make sure that you know, because that's all she talks about, and she gives you a history lesson all the time. There is a sense of pride here, and I think it's because we've had to fight so hard for each other, and I don't think people understand that. No matter what your party affiliation is, just like now with everything that's going on with COVID-19, we take care of each other. If I call my neighbor and say I need a wrench, he's over with the wrench. He not only gives me a wrench, but he's coming over to find out what's going on, because he's going to help. And we just take care of each other. If you're hungry, we'll feed you. It's just who we are. And we're territorial with each other, and we have a real strong sense of pride. And I think it's because of all the heartache and all the hard work that's come out of this state that there's just something about the people here, and it's just the salt of the earth. I love to sit around a bonfire and talk to one of our elders and hear the stories. It's just the people here, whether you realize it or not. We do have more Democrats and independents registered than we do Republicans, and not all Republicans are bad people. We're not all racist. We have a lot of good people in this state, and I think that we're stigmatized oftentimes. We don't have no teeth, no shoes, no brains, but there's a lot of good people in Appalachia, and I just want people to know that.
That's right. Oh, as an Appalachian, I'm like very emotional right now. I love you guys, and I'm in this movement because of poverty, the hardships, but the good people too that I believed in my whole life. So hearing you guys talk about it and how you're going to take that all the way up to Capitol Hill with you, and those stories and the struggle, and you're the ones who's going to be writing policy for us, makes me have some faith in the world, right?
If you don't mind a minute, I want to talk about Brandon Congress. I have been working with Brandon Congress since 2018, and I want to thank every one of you folks for all your hard work and dedication to vet candidates and to amplify their profiles, and to make sure that we do have a coalition of candidates. And you guys, I can't say enough about Brand New Congress and all the hard work that they have put into making sure that they support candidates like myself and everybody in the slate. It's just not a rubber stamp. It's not just an endorsement. They have offered a lot of support to the candidates and the whole slate. And there's a lot of integrity in Brand New Congress. And I know that, you know, there's a lot of .orgs and organizations out there that people are leery about. And I think I overvet .orgs and organizations sometimes, and Brand New Congress is true blue. And look at the whole slate, guys. And I want to thank everybody that works so hard every day to make sure that we do have somebody to go to and have the support that we have with you guys. Thank you so much.
I just want to jump into and echo this. And whenever I met this slate in November, when we met at the summit, I was just looking around in total awe of every single person that has become part of the slate and of the BNC team and everything, because we're really a family. And for that to have come together in such a short period of time, and we are all so passionate about the same issues and we're supportive of each other, and for Brand New Congress's team to also think about like our mental health and to arrange life coaches, for example, is just a small example of what it means to be part of this slate that all watches out for each other. And we truly are a family, and that's what's really beautiful. So I check out the whole slate. We're 3 people with Appalachian roots, but check out the whole slate wherever you are. If there's a candidate that inspires you, get behind them, make some calls, donate $1 because it makes a difference. I know personally, and we together can all bring some real change to this country.
Well, you know, it's hard for an average voter oftentimes to be able to even vet their candidates. And I'm so grateful for Brand New Congress to go through the vetting process that they have and to work overtime like they have to make sure that people have a place to go to, that they know that that candidate's not taking corporate and corporate PAC dollars, and they have a platform that's going to actually support people, and they vet to make sure that, you know, they're not part of that establishment that is going to end up serving lobbyists and corporations. And like I said, they work overtime to make sure that happens. And I'm truly grateful that voters have that in Brand New Congress.
Thank you guys so much. I'm moved right now, and I can say on behalf of Brand New Congress, we're all moved, because I know everyone watching is, and the supporters too, because they, you know, all the supporters are kind of the lifeblood behind of everything that we have going on, and our volunteers and our whole team. So thank you guys so much, and you guys especially. I think we need to kind of start to wrap up here. I know it's 9:35 and you guys are candidates and you need to sleep, because you have 12 and 14-hour days as it is most of the time. So before we wrap up, if you can just remind voters about where they can go to get more information about you, what your primary dates are. Just remind them again one more time, because folks are voting right now, and I just want them to know how they can cast those votes for you.
Go ahead, Lauren, you go first.
Awesome. So my website is laurenashcraft.com. You can see the spelling of my name right there. laurenashcraft.com, which has all of my stances on everything, my story, which you've heard some of tonight, and also just ways that you can get more involved with the campaign, a merch shop. It's a fun place to stop. And also a one-stop shop for COVID-19 information if you are in New York, in our 12th district, and need help or need connected to any kind of resources. So I just want to say, and I know this was talked about earlier in this town hall, but every single call could mean every single vote. Every call could translate into one more person checking our name on that absentee ballot, and it makes a huge difference. So that is why if you go to act.laurenashcraft.com, it's an amazing way to get involved tomorrow with my team. And each one of those shifts that you're going to see that's available to you comes with an optional training and an optional debrief, so you can share stories and get advice for the next shift that you do with us. And also, again, I know there's a donation link. It's split between us all tonight. And I love these other candidates so much. And just like I said earlier, we are a family. So if one of us makes it in, I will be so happy. But if all of Brand New Congress's slate makes it in, this country is going to be on such a good path. And it's a beautiful thing to think about. So you can help that come true with $1 and making calls with us. And I really thank you for being part of this with all of us.
I see Robin Kane shaking her head.
So we do also have a tab on our website. My website is paulajean.com. That's Jean with a J. So anybody in West Virginia, there's a list of resources there for you, but you can also reach out to anybody on the team if you need any type of support, or if you're worried about food or anything right now, and we'll make sure that you're connected with some folks around the state. And you can find us on Twitter and Facebook, Paula Jean 2020. And if you want to volunteer, you can sign up on the website, but you can also email Andrew at paulajean.com, and he'll get you set up. But, everybody, I hope you stay safe, and let's continue to unite our fight. I know everything is hard right now, but let's just all continue to stick together, and let's make the best of what we have. And let's make sure that we do fight for our children and grandchildren's future and not give up hope. Just because we suffer a few losses doesn't mean that everything's over.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining. Remember that none of our candidates take corporate PAC money. As you guys saw tonight, they're all regular working folks. They've lived through what we've all lived through, and that in itself is going to make a difference in Congress. And so thank you guys all for joining. Please check out the donation links below. BNC is taking no proceeds. These proceeds go to Lauren, Paula, and Charles's campaigns. So please donate today, but also just thank you for coming out, for watching us, share our stories, talk about these candidates. Let's talk about this movement. Let's get people elected. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you for hosting this and being such amazing people to work with. And because of Brand New Congress, this entire country can change. It's really beautiful.
Right. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you too, Robin.
Yeah, Robin, thank you too.
Thank you, Robin.
We haven't really talked about Robin. She does a lot for us, sends emails and all kinds of stuff. Her and her husband, Billy, are some of the hardest working people on the planet. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Very welcome. Okay.
Well, let's win these elections, and we'll chat with you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.